Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to welcome you to another Friday Forum. It's so exciting to be able to start a new year in 2022 and be able to gather together. And I know we're going to have lots of people joining us over the next couple of minutes. And today I have some very special guests. We're going to be talking about something that is very near and dear to my heart. And I know it's very near and dear to both Julia and Erin's heart. So let's welcome Julia and Erin, and through the chat, share who you are and where you're from. And let's get today's Friday Forum going. I'm so glad to see all of you and hope that your week, and gosh, it's the last Friday of January already. I can hardly believe it. So let's see who we have. And we've got Penny from Virginia, Terry from Washington, all you guys that are here early, I'm able to see. We've got Denver, North Carolina, Monterey, Nashville. You can see that we have lots of people. And I love using the chat because it gives you an opportunity to talk to each other. And I have a feeling in today's topic about professional development, growth, those things that are so important to us as educators and professionals is going to generate a lot of discussion. So let me introduce Julia and Erin as everybody's joining us. We've got Nashville now, Florida, LA, Sonia from the UK. It's like probably 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, your time. We're so glad you're here. I've known both Julia Varriale and Erin Avery for many, many years. Julia and Erin are both instructors for UC programs. Julia teaches for UCLA, Erin teaches for UCI, and many of you know I teach for UCLA as well. Julia has an MA in education and higher education. She's been on both sides of the desk, both as in higher education on a college side and also on a counselor side. She also received the UCLA certificate in 2008. So she's when did you get your certificate?
2003. I've been teaching in the program since 2008.
So even earlier. And I don't even know when the certificate started. Do you know when it started, Julia?
90s.
Oh, did it? So it's been around for a while.
Yep.
So you've had over 50 sections and over 1,100 students. I'm sure many of your former students are with us today. So if you were one of Julia's former students, please give her a shout out in the chat and let her know which class you took from her, because you've taught the principles, the college admissions process, and now you teach the practicum, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
And Erin, I'm so glad to have you here today. Erin is a doctor of ministry. She got her degree from Drew University. She's done a lot of work on mindfulness through transitions. You have a book about that, right, Erin? And she has got a master's from Oxford and Yale. She's a commissioner for the American Institute of Certified Educational Planners, which is the institution that you apply to become a certified educational planner. And she's also, both Julia and Erin are distinguished instructors in the UC programs. And Erin, you teach principles of education process at UCI. And how long have you done that?
This is going into my 9th year.
Wow, that's exciting. You guys make me feel like I'm really young in this. I started teaching at UCLA in 2016. So I'm way behind you in this. So look, we've got comments from Linda and Terrell and everybody. And if you took Erin's class in UCI, please put a shout out to her in here too, because I'm sure many of you have also had UCI. I think that's one of the things we can talk about too a little bit, is the difference between the two programs. I know I get asked that question all the time about the difference. So and Susan, thank you. She's giving me a shout out too. So let's start with a poll. I want to see who you are and kind of what your guys' status is. And that'll help you to understand everybody else in the audience and also help all three of us, Julia and I. So let me see if I can get this. I'm going to launch a poll and you should see it on your screen. There are 5 questions. And as you finish one question, just go on to the next. Don't think about it too much. Just give your closest answer. We're just trying to get a sense of who you are. So, all right. And Jeffrey, love. We have a lot of people, Julia, who've had me now, then they have you, because I take them from my class to your class, because I teach the special issues class. And then now this term I'm teaching the new class on finishing the college planning process. So that'll be good. So I've put on your screen the poll. There's 5 questions. Let us know what your role is. I know I have a lot of people who are in lots of different roles that attend my Friday forum. And I know there will be people who will be watching this afterwards. And I want you to be thinking about, well, what role do you have? So looks like we've got, and Julia and Erin, can you see the poll on your screen? Okay.
Yes, I tried to answer it, and in big red letters it says hosts and panelists can't vote.
Oh.
So there I go. I tried.
Yeah. So we'll give you, looks like we're down to question 4. People are down to question 5. All right. I'm going to give you we're at about a minute. I'm going to let you guys finish doing this, and then we'll go through it so that everybody can see what the answer is. The session is being recorded today so that you can come back and review some of the information. And I know there were well over 100 people who registered for this. I know a lot of people are not able to attend. So I know a lot of people will be looking at this later too. Okay, looks like we've got a pretty good number of people. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and let's see what we've got. All right, so let me share the results here. All right, you guys in the chat, let me know if you're seeing the results. Oh, Kathy, you couldn't see the poll at all? Are you guys seeing the results now? Okay, so it looks like everybody here, okay. Great. Everybody here is an IEC, so that helps us to be able to have our conversation be focused on that. So that is very helpful. And it looks like our years of experience is pretty distributed. We've got, between fairly new from 1 to 6 years, to 6 to 10, and then there's several people who have 10 or plus years of experience. I wanted to put another option on there. I'm older than dirt, so I kept counting a long time ago, but I figured that probably wouldn't fly too well. All right. So number 3, which professional organizations do you belong to? Because we're going to talk about that today too. So we've got several that belong to IUCA, several belong to HECA. I should have put both because I know a lot of people belong to, or multiple, belong to several organizations. So we've got NCAG, which stands for National College Advocacy Group. Other, if you put down other, put in the chat what that other is. If there's another professional group, we're always looking for that opportunity to learn and see what groups are available. Maybe you're starting one. I don't know what a crazy thing that would be to start an organization. And then several people, it's like, no, I haven't joined any yet. And that's that's fine too. That's part of why you're here. All right, what other organizations? We have several people belong to NACAC, the regional ACAC, if you don't know what that is. The NACAC is the umbrella organization, and depending on where you live, there are regional organizations that connect to you there. Several people belong to council organizations. I know I used to belong to a local, it was our San Joaquin Council Organization. So we had high school counselors and I did a lot of things there. Business organizations, I'm a little surprised we don't have more people in business. So that might be something that you take away today, is to go into more look at business organization. All right. So Erin, are you seeing this? the CEP, the question number 5. 68% of the people said, I'm considering applying to become a CEP. Nobody's in the process. We have a few people are a CEP, and people who it's like, I don't know what that is. And people who say, I'm not interested. And that's perfectly fine. So it gives us an understanding of kind of where you're at for our audience and for our conversation today. And I'm seeing in the chat, talking about the North Carolina Career Development Association, Susan's the College Consultants of Colorado. Love that, you guys. That's my adopted group. Since there's not, well, we have one. We have our own little small one here in Central California now. The Seattle, Colorado. I know a lot of, Texas, a lot of areas have these groups. So that is very, very grateful. Oh, this is nice. Independent Education Consultants of the Conejo Valley. It's very nice. All right. So that gives us an understanding of where you're at and we're at. So let's introduce you to Julia and Erin. We'll start with you, Julia. Can you give us a little bit of information about your background and what brought you to become a college counselor?
Well, I'd say my path is not particularly linear. I went back to college as an adult. So I was an adult returning to college in my 40s. And I was studying anything I wanted to, and I fell in love with geography. So as a geographer, I'm a demographer. And I had gone through the college process myself. My daughter went through the college process 2 years later. And I became interested in admission and enrollment trends and the demographics of the admission process. I always loved looking at the Witchy report, knocking at the door report, which, projects high school graduation rates for every state. So I started at BC in the Educational Research and Measurement program. And because I was a psych minor in college as an adult. And I decided quite early on that I didn't think I didn't want to be that messenger. So I switched over to the higher ed program, and I have my master's in higher ed administration from BC. I did my internship at BC in admission, and I stayed at that school for another 6 years. And serendipitously, when I left that position, I got a position teaching at the UCLA program. One of my former instructors recommended I teach in the program, and I've been there ever since. And it is my main priority is teaching in the program. I do a little consulting, but it's called 90 minutes over coffee. It's not quite the same as packages or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I have studied admission enrollment trends. I also study student affairs and higher ed finance. And I've done that pretty consistently for over 20 years.
Wow.
That's my background, and I'm happy to pass it on in class.
Oh, that's quite it gives you a much different perspective coming from that policy in college and, on your master's side.
I'm much bigger picture than most people in the profession.
What about you, Erin? What's your background? How did you come to become a college counselor?
So I had the luxury of working with an educational consultant when I was applying to boarding school and college and graduate school. And her name was Judith Berg. So if anybody knows Judy Berg, she was the president of ICA. So I knew of the field. Many educational consultants and counselors come to it maybe as a second or third act. But for me, having worked in boarding schools, I was a chaplain, and I taught and coached and conducted a cappella groups and all of those things. And then I worked on the undergraduate level in administration. And I also taught because my background is theology and religious studies. So I stayed active in universities, but started my practice in 2003. So I always say it was my first baby, because after that I had 4 children of my own. And so I feel like I've worked with everyone else's teenagers, and now I have three out of the four teenagers of my own. So seeing the process with new and fresh eyes, but it's been a wonderful journey for me because it's constantly changing. I mean, I think I'm preaching to the choir when I say that the landscape of college admissions has changed pretty significantly over the last 2 years. And it's really fun to be in a field where it's constantly new. It's, you know, it's always beginning again. And people need guidance. So I also was a Boston College Eagle. I'm undergrad, and then was able to study in many places, and then came right back to suburban New Jersey, but work with a domestic and an international clientele. And then 2 years ago, I was flattered to be invited to be a commissioner on for the American Institute of Certified Educational Planners. I, like many of you, perhaps I'm a little bit of a credential junkie. So a little going along, I always wanted to have whatever the highest level of certification was. I wanted it. I wanted it for the sake of wanting it, and some of us do. But I wanted to have the burden of proof that I was aspiring to be the most credentialed and qualified in the field, and ongoing, because there are many people who will join professional organizations and perhaps they stagnate or they plateau and they're not growing in the field. And I think that just, based on what we've seen in the last 2 years, it's incredibly important for professionals to continue to keep their finger on the pulse. Even just 2 days ago with the changes in the College Board and the SAT revision, just so important to keep our finger on the pulse of the field for our students and their families.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the enticing things about this profession is that it's ever growing, it's ever changing, and it's never boring, that's for sure. And this morning I was noticing that Common App announced that the prompts for next year are going to stay the same. So if you guys haven't seen that yet, that's good news. So we're going to keep the prompts that they have had, I guess, last 2 or 3 years, stay the same. So can you talk about the program at UC Irvine and what that entails? And Julie, if you can talk about the UCLA, let's talk about those. And there are several others. And many of you, I know there's one at UC San Diego. Many of you have done UC Berkeley. I know Columbia has a program. I know Rice has one. It's more for high school counselors. So if you've done a different program, put that in the chat so people can see what the different choices are. But Erin, let's start with you. Tell us about the UC Irvine. That was founded and started by Stephen Antonoff and IACA to try and focus on the business of becoming an IEC. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. And so I had taken some classes with the UCLA, and it was quite a nice, diverse mix of school-based counselors and independent consultants. But when Steve, who is a real friend and mentor to me, started to launch the UCI program, I was the first class. So not only am I a graduate of the program, then later I was invited to teach in it. I teach the principles of educational consulting. That's the first class in the certificate. And then, of course, on the other side, the other bookend is the practicum. And everything in between, I think there are 4 or 5 mandatory courses. And then you can choose from a selection of what's relevant or pertinent to your practice, say gap year consulting or, resources, things of that nature, where you can really specialize a little bit more. It's really progressed. And many of the classes each semester that I teach, I'm asked by the administration if I'd be willing to exceed the number of allotted students. So I'm sure you experienced that too. And at first I was apprehensive because I liked the smaller format. But I think it's a testimony to how much demand there is out there for people exploring this field of independent educational consulting, how many people are perhaps crossing over from maybe in retirement wanting to go independent, and people who are interested in not necessarily drinking from a fire hose, because we know that there are other types of programs, maybe summer programs, where you get a lot of information in a short period of time. Whereas I think that these programs like UCLA and UC Irvine may take 12 to 18 months, perhaps, to get all the coursework in, but you're really getting an excellent education. And I would say, with the exception of perhaps myself, you're getting really excellent teaching, and right across the curriculum from really people who are really tenured in the field.
And that connects to the whole professional development, having those courses, especially as you're coming on. And as you said, people are switching careers. A lot of times it's their second or third career. It gives them an opportunity. It's kind of an entryway. So Julia, what about the UCLA program? What would you say distinguishes the UCLA College Counseling Certificate Program?
Well, it has a very broad student body. It's not focused on the independent consultant. Steve Antonoff was a teacher at the UCLA program when I went through it. He was one of my instructors. And he decided that there was a place for a IEC specific program, and he took that to Irvine. I would say that it's a very in-depth program. Anybody who's there cares about their students. They want to be the very best they can at the program, at helping their students through the college process. I can have students with 0 to 30 plus years experience. They can come from any background. They can be school counselors, military advisors, IECs, want to be IECs, international counselors, you name it, we can have it. And I think that brings a real richness to the dialogue, to the discussion. I think the strength of online learning is the opportunity for discourse. If you go to a traditional master's program or a traditional college program, as I used to say to my BC professors, if I raise my hand in your class, how long do I have to discuss, bring my opinion across? And 30 seconds if I'm lucky, 45. In these programs, you have as long as you need to think about what you want to talk about and articulate it, and in writing. And I think that's special. Mm-hmm. So the program at UCLA has just changed. They've combined 2 courses. They've combined counseling the college-bound student and the college admission process. And I'm sorry to say, I don't know the name of the new course. So sorry. I do believe it's still the same number of courses you have to take, but there might be one more elective that you can take instead of having the set 5 courses or 6 courses and then the 6 credit practicum.
And we'll put links to the UCLA and the UC Irvine. And if you in the audience, if you know of other ones that you want to add to the chat, that's great. And that's how I feel about, because I get asked all the time, what's the difference between UCLA and UC Irvine? And it really depends. They're both excellent programs, and there's nothing wrong with doing both if you want. It's nothing wrong with belonging to multiple organizations. If you're wanting to focus on becoming an IEC and just have that as your focus, then UC Irvine is designed for that. UCLA, as Julia says, is much more broad. We do have a lot of students from a lot of different backgrounds. I think that adds a lot to it as well. And then Carl, you bring up a really good question about, do you have to take the entire program? No, you can enroll in classes at either one. And oftentimes I'll have people say, I was like, you should go take this class at UCI.
I've recommended UCI courses too.
Things like that too, because then that, as you said, if you take those courses based on what your needs or interests are, the class I teach the special issues in education. And so it gives me a little opportunity to talk a little bit about international or athletes or performing arts or LGBTQ or veterans. We have all these different topics, but I can only spend a week on them. So then if there's a course at UCLA or UC Irvine or someplace else where you can just do international or gap year or things like that, then, find the classes that's going to help you grow and learn. So, and Christine did the UC San Diego. I know Steve Mercer is an instructor. I know those are very, very well done too. And Berkeley used to be an in-person, and now they've gone online. And with COVID, that was one of the benefits that we had with our program at UCLA and Irvine, because we were already online. We've always been taught online, so we didn't have to transition. So let's go to organizations then. Erin, let's start with you. First of all, I want to know, what's your definition of professional development? How do you define it?
Sure. I mean, I think it's a huge umbrella that, I mean, if you're early in the field, perhaps it's just attending conferences and networking. But as we go along and say, for example, you do apply for the CEP, you're expected to have 75 hours of it could be conference attendance or workshop attendance, teaching, publishing, mentoring, supervising staff, volunteering in your community or in your industry. And all of those things qualify for professional development.
Yeah, absolutely. Julia, what is your thought? What would you say is the definition?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Your definition of professional development.
Well, I just think that this is a profession where the ball is constantly moving, where the policies change, the deadlines change, the selectivity changes from one year to the next. You just have to stay involved. You have to, I think when I started as on the college side, and I was a member of NEACAC, and I was on the board, and more recently, I've co-chaired the graduate coursework SIG with Patrick O'Connor at NACAC. I just stepped down from that. I think that, we owe it to the students. I mean, first and foremost, we should not be thinking about where we're going to get our next dollar. We should be thinking about what's best for our students. It's not about getting them in, it's about getting them to a school where they'll thrive. And I think that in order to do that, you have to really continually study the process, continually study what fit means, and fit changes. I mean, right now, economic fit is what financial fit is much more important than it used to be. There are a lot of things that we just have to think about that we might not have thought of before. So to me, I just think we owe it to our students to do that.
And that's the key, right? We can't just, it's not a one and done, take this course, you're done, or go to this conference. It's an ongoing thing. And that's why I started the Friday forums, especially when COVID started. It's like, we need to make sense out of of the chaos and, what's going on, and things were just changing so fast just to bring this together. And then it's just continued. And so I've just been very honored and blessed that it's continued and people have been finding value in it. So what benefit is there to them belonging to an organization to get your professional development? Julia, do you want to start with that one?
Didn't I just answer that?
Well, let's talk about organizations, like which, you can get professional development by reading the newspaper, being on listservs, provide, you can get it without being part of an organization. So in fact, I was talking to Cyndy before we started about the fact that my eyes are very tired. I read about 5 hours a day outside of the classroom because I read news feeds. I read Inside Higher Ed. I read the Chronicle of Higher Education. I read the I've got the New York Times, the London Times, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, the LA Times. I scan for education, anything interesting in education, Education Dive, the Hechinger Report, Academic Impressions, trying to think what else, come to me later. But my eyes are tired. I was just telling her that I've murdered my eyes doing this. I think, in terms of going to the meetings, I love going to the meetings. It's a wonderful way to network. It's a wonderful way to learn new things, to find out about topics that you might not be as familiar with. All of our ethics, codes of ethics tell us that if something is beyond our scope, we should be handing it off to somebody else. And I hope people are doing that. But at the same time, it's good to have a modicum of understanding of maybe the athletic process. You might go to a session on an athletic process or changes to the NCAA, the new rules that they've just put in place,
that's, athletes can make money. It's just critical you make friends. I have lifelong friends from going to meetings. I have clicker control, but that doesn't really count, does it? I mean, I travel so that I can have a room to myself and clicker control. I'm sorry, this is just the way it is. I just think that you owe it to yourself. You make those connections. I mean, a lot of people have, I have a group for former students, a lot of them work together. Mm-hmm. And we meet 3 times a week. And I'd like to say I'm mentoring them, but really they mentor each other. They come in and I barely get a word in edgewise. So yeah, so it's critical. It's good for you and it's good for your students. The most important thing is it should be good for your students. I keep trying to bring it back to student-centeredness.
Well, and I think that's the key too, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how you can bring that professional development, that goal and that opportunity. I mean, you can always set up for example, you can set up your own college visits by yourself. There's nothing that keeps you from doing that, but there's a whole different experience and environment. And you learn in a different way when you do it with a group of other counselors. So, Erin, what about for you? What do you see as the benefit of belonging to organizations and doing professional development from that perspective?
And of course, I have to own the bias of being a commissioner on the AICEP, but we all need to be very aware and abreast of the trends of states to come in and regulate our industry. So if anyone's here, on this webinar from Illinois or Oregon, we're paying very close attention. And we need to, as a profession, promote ongoing professional development. And we need to find ways and resources to corroborate what we are doing. So why is it ever that more important now to be involved with professional organizations, to be held to a standard of ethical practice? We've all seen what happened with Varsity Blues and what goes wrong when an industry goes unregulated, or when people start to operate, go rogue, if you will. And I mean, of course, that was very illegal activity that monopolized on the vulnerabilities of the industry in general. But if we're members of a professional organization and certainly a certifying body, we have the opportunity to make the case for the level of professionalism that we're operating under. So we can indicate, our professional preparation. We can, and we also can convey that to prospective clients. I know I certainly always nod to my certifications and my professional organizations in an initial consultation, just to let people know that they're in very good hands and their children are in very good hands.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Now we're talking about the benefit to us for being part of these professional organizations. What about the other way around? Why should we belong to professional organizations, and how can that be of benefit? So, Erin, do you want to start with that?
I would say the solidarity is fantastic. If you are operating as an IEC, I always say I put an independent educational consultant, and sometimes it can be a little bit lonely if you're operating, you're running a practice by yourself. Maybe you have independent contractors, maybe you have tutors like I do, and but recently I've been trying to scale and leverage the company and bring in more people who can join in that greater mission. But it can be a little bit of an isolating industry. And although working, I work with traditional boarding schools and colleges and grad school. If you're working with that one age group, you can be very relevant. But I also crave the time together with other consultants. For example, 2 weeks ago, I sponsored a book club meeting through American Institute of Certified Educational Planners. And we read Jeff Salingo's book, Who Gets In and Why. And of course, he was the editor of the Chronicle of Higher Education. You got it. And it was reported, and it was for some of us who've been in the industry, there was nothing new under the sun. However, it was just great to have so many experienced professionals together dialoguing and talking about, well, what's new and what's next and what sort of ideas and what should we be doing on behalf of the industry to grow it and to continue to bring accreditation and so that people see the field and know it, because certainly it's relatively speaking a young field. And I think that there are still some people out there who maybe have a pejorative association with educational consultants in general. And certainly some school-based folks who maybe don't understand or appreciate how if we're on this side of the desk, we're working hard to make their lives easier and better. And then if they have students who desire or require more support, we are all colleagues in the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Julia, what about for you? What would, when somebody asks you, why should I belong to a professional organization? What is your answer in terms of the value to the organization itself?
Oh, well, you need to get involved. You can't just join an organization and sit there and do nothing. I edited the NEACAC newsletter for 5 years. I was the chair of communications for 3 years, 2005 to 2008. I've been active for many years as a SIG co-leader at NACAC, just stepped down. I'm slowing down, so you can see I'm kind of trying to drop off a lot of stuff as I go along. The organizations give you a lot, you need to give something back. That's the way I feel about it. It's not a one-way road. I think a lot of the people that I'm seeing here are very involved in HECA. I know Ellen Cuppersmith is, and Ellen's made wonderful connections with schools and school reps because she organizes college fairs for HECA. And she's done a fabulous job with that. It's just, these are wonderful people. Anybody who's involved in college admission on either side of the coin, most of them, especially on the college side, are not doing it for the money, or the high school side. They're doing it because they love kids and they like helping them. You meet a lot of wonderful, wonderful people in these organizations. I highly recommend them. I highly recommend getting involved, whether it's in IUCA or HECA. In IUCA, they have wonderful local groups. There's a lot of ways you can get involved. HECA has local groups. I visited the first and only college visit I've done since the lockdown was to Providence College with the New England HECA group. That was wonderful. Yeah, I was sick for 3 weeks after that, but it was really good. I did not with COVID, just with a cold. It's fabulous. You get a lot of learning out of it. You get as much as you give, you get back tenfold. So I highly recommend just get involved. Don't just join, get involved. It's not just a piece of paper. It's an active process. You have to be an active.
Absolutely. And I've always felt like, many of you know, professional development is one of my main passions as well. And we can do things independently, but there is so much more impact that we can do together. And that's why oftentimes several organizations, IUCA and HECA and NCAG, will come together on an issue like with this this Illinois law. They were proposing a similar or some other kind of law like that here in California at one point. So I know people are asking in the chat, well, what was going on with the Illinois law? So if we can pull up a link to that.
Yeah, I can do that. Hold on.
Okay, and stick it in there. I saw it yesterday. But we'll have much more impact, and we're going to be able to teach people. I'm in Central California. When I first started doing this over 30 years ago, nobody knew what an educational consultant was. And I still get the question, well, who do you work for? Do you work for the high school or do the college? Well, I work for you as a parent. And so having my voice combined and being able to have that impact. And as you said, Erin, to be able to have ethics and standards and create some benchmarks that you can look to, then that makes such a difference. And our profession is relatively young, as college counselors, even in the schools or organizations, and especially as independent education consultants, we're just growing this. So the more professional development, the more we have people contributing, as you said, Julia, the better this profession is going to grow. So that leads us to the discussion of the next aspect of it, and why I was prompted. I want to put a shout out to Sandy Lawrence, because she emailed me a long time ago and she's like, can you do something on professional development? And I thought it was an excellent idea. So that's how we got here today. But I want to talk about, the certified educational planner. What is that and why is that important? So Julia, are you a CEP?
Yes, I am. I took the test in 2015.
Okay.
I took it in San Diego.
At a conference
At a conference, and I have yet to open my checkbox from the San Diego conference. It's going to be like Christmas when I finally open it. I don't know. One of these days. So yeah, no, I just felt that teaching in the program, I needed to show that I call it show that you know. Mm-hmm. And it's one, if I'm going to be teaching people this process and they're going to go out and be professionals, I needed to show that I had the knowledge bank to do it. And that's why I did it. And actually, I was involved in the graduate coursework SIG for years, ever since it started almost, at NACAC. And I remember Bill Dingledine, the CEP kind of started, it was a little tiny nugget of thought. He said, when I go to the gym, my personal trainer has to be licensed. They have to study, they have to take an exam. They can't just help me. They have to know every muscle and every bone in my body. They have to make sure that they're not going to hurt me. And I think that really that started the ball rolling. I was not part of the group that developed the CEP test. But thanks for coming in, Sandy. We'll see you soon. But I think that started it. Patrick O'Connor, of course, was there. He was involved in the development of the CEP exam. Steve Antonoff. I'm not sure who else was involved in it, but Steve Syverson, of course, was involved in it for a long time. I want to emphasize that the CEP is not meant for just IECs.
No.
No, you can be a school counselor. They would love it if school counsel. I think it needs to be the college visit part has to be adjusted a little bit for school counselors, because not all of them are allowed out to go to school.
It has, especially with COVID.
Yeah, they have to adjust the test for school counselors. But I do think that it's very important when you think of what a stressful time this is for kids, when you think of how important this is, we talk about college or education as being transformational, and I'm a firm believer that higher education means more than a four-year degree. Mm-hmm. Not everybody is best suited to go straight on to a four-year degree, and yet we send them off willy-nilly, and it doesn't end well for a lot of kids. Right. So at any rate, I just think that I forgot where I was going with it. See, I was telling Cyndy beforehand, the reason I teach online is because I can't remember my sentence from one end to the other. It's all right. No problem.
I could jump in and talk about the, mm-hmm. Follow up what you're saying, Julie, about really verifying our knowledge base.
Yes.
And if anybody's interested, because it did say a lot of people were kind of interested in maybe pursuing the CEP. Whenever you hear the word assessment, which we don't use the word exam, but everyone starts to get a little bit apprehensive. So maybe just saying a few words about that. So the assessment is really two parts, right? It's going to take you, a handful of hours to do. The first part you really can't study for. That's the part where you're getting a case study. and you're drawing from your knowledge base of working with clients. And I will tell you that the first time I applied to take the CEP assessment, I was rejected. And it was because, number one, I wasn't at the time a professional member of a broader base of professional organizations. I was only a member of IECA. And so the feedback back to me was, it would be nice if you had a broader affiliations. And the second thing was, I had only been in practice for maybe 3 years. And again, with the credential junkie, they were like, well, it might not be time yet. So I took that into consideration and grew my practice and my knowledge base, and then took it in Toronto back in the day. So this might be like 15 years ago. So the first part is the case studies, and then the second part, you're going to submit whatever your area of expertise. So for me, it would be boarding schools, college, graduate schools. You'll submit a list, and from that, they'll give you 4 of those, and you get to choose 2, and really just write at length and really show what you know. And I think that's a really great part of the assessment. You're not memorizing data, you're not memorizing numbers and all of that. It's really just like almost like a mini FISC guide write-up, and in fact, in the Principles of Educational Consulting class, that first class in UC Irvine, that's the project, is to go and do a visit and then to do a very concise and cogent write-up of the college. So you're practicing that from the very moment you're pursuing maybe this certificate in launching your professional development. So don't be intimidated at all by the assessment. It's really an opportunity to show what you know. It's not trying to reveal what you don't know. And it's a really great group of people behind it who are evaluating the assessment, who are creating the assessment. And it's a great opportunity for us to corroborate, and it's kind of like a pat on the back. Some people say it's like the gold standard of educational consulting is to be a CEP, and I would say that's it's just a great feeling to have gotten to a level where you've passed a board certified exam.
Right.
And in addition to what Julia was saying, like, in New Jersey, nail technicians have to be certified.
Yes.
So I think it's a really important addition to a growing field.
I was a licensed riding instructor in Massachusetts. I had to, back before computers, taking exams online, I had to go into Boston to the government building and take a written exam to teach riding. I taught hunt seat equitation long time ago. Susan had a good question about, I'm pretty sure CEP must have changed their requirements for in-person visits for the last 2 years. Erin, do you know? Can you answer her question?
Yes. So there were you were getting 2, so I think a half credit for any virtual visits. So that was the way that we were addressing that, the virtual and the remote opportunity to continue that. Cyndy, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that understanding that the certified educational planner is something that you can aspire to. It's something you have to get experience in order to be at a level you can become a certified educational planner. It's not just for independents. We're really encouraging people from public school, private school, anybody who's working with students in this capacity. And it's an opportunity to share your level of knowledge and expertise. But I will tell you, and Steve knows, and Steve Antonoff, he would talk to me many times over the years about becoming CEP. And I actually had I had an application in for many years, but I wasn't able to do the assessment. I even served on the commission like you are, and I wasn't a CEP. So everybody was amazed that I wasn't a CEP, but I was very apprehensive about taking the assessment because I do live in a very unique environment. My students are not going to Harvard and Stanford and Yale, so I don't have I just, my knowledge and expertise and the kind of students that I work with are just very different. So I was very worried about it, and my families don't care. That's the other question we get. Well, sometimes families care what credentials and what your knowledge and expertise is, and others don't, and mine don't. So it took me a really long time to take it. I took the assessment last summer. It is now online, which is great. And if anybody has taken it since then, you can put something in the chat. But I ended up doing it in person because I've known so many people have done that. And I will tell you, it was way easier than I ever thought it was going to be. And somebody asked, is it timed? It's not timed. You can take as much time as you need to. And I thought, oh, I'll be in there in and out in like 2 or 3 hours. It took me 8 hours. Steve finally had to kick me out, because because I just had so much to write about, and exactly what you're talking about, Erin. So anybody that's listening is like been hesitant or worried, I went and did it. And I'm just so glad I did. And it really was not as intimidating as I thought it was going to be. The process to apply, as you mentioned, is you apply, and then you're not forwarded to that next step of assessment unless the commission or the people looking at your application feel you're ready. And I think that's important to know too. And they're there to help you and support you, it's just like our college admissions, they're not there to turn you down. It's there to make sure you're ready and prepared. So it is a 2-part process. There's an application, and depending on what organization you belong to, there are different applications, like for IECA members or HECA members or other organizations. So go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in right there because in the advertisement for this Friday talk, there was a suggestion about forming study groups, to prepare, and if that is a possibility. And I wanted to open that up if anyone is interested to discuss that, because I think that one of the things when I was earlier in my career and I would go to conferences, I always attended if there was ever an offering for a workshop or a talk about case studies. I always attended because I loved it was like a group wiki, right? Everyone was leveraging their knowledge. And I was going to say to you before, I always say to students, I'm going to leave no stone unturned. But imagine you have a table full of stones and maybe you have 3,000 four-year undergraduate colleges in the country, right? Our colleagues can help us because they've turned over maybe some different stones than we have. So in terms of like a study group, what were you thinking about when you posed that question, Cyndy?
I'm going to put, people can send me an email. I'm going to create a little interest form and we'll create a little study group and we'll pick a time. And I think for those exact reasons, I think we'll find support and comfort in just meeting together. And I wanted to make sure that people knew that, that there are other people that have the same feelings, same hesitations, same worries that they do. And by meeting together, we can, crowdsource this, just as you said, and make it happen. So I will, yeah, Michelle says, tests scare me. Yeah, no kidding. Most of us haven't had a test.
All of us.
Right. Since we went to school. That is definitely. So yes, I'm glad you brought that up, Erin. That's what I wanted to do, is create a study group because we can see, thanks for everybody. I will put this out. You can send me an email, just send me a little email, I'm interested, so that I have that. I'm going to create a landing page, and in the follow-up email that goes out with the recording of this, I'll have a link to that, and then we'll start the study group. And now, they'll need to put their application in if they're going to study for this exam, right, Erin? Mm-hmm. So yeah, so I'll lay out that process. If you haven't done your application yet, we'll find out exactly what you need to do to get that done as well. So, well, we've got just a few more minutes. And I just want to close with, what advice do you have for counselors in terms of why they need professional development, or just in general and being a professional? So Erin, let's start with you and then Julia. What advice do you have? Erin, we're going to start with you. Did I lose you? You just
I froze just a moment, but everyone's heard that old bad joke, what do you call, the medical student that graduates at the bottom of her class? Doctor. So they're all
Doctor.
right. So the onus is upon us to continue to grow as professionals, and like Julia said, so that we can be the greatest resource for our students, whoever walks through the door. And then we do need to refer out if we do not have that expertise that student that's required of that student. I remember going to the IECA winter retreat, and we were addressed by a president of a college that was a college for all special needs students in Florida. And he was saying, he gave us a staggering number, a percentage of students with learning differences who actually successfully graduate from a four-year college. And it was something like 17% of students who matriculate and actually subsequently, and they were doing research to try to isolate why those students, 17% were successful and why the others were not. And what they found was the supportive adults in the community were a key component. But I think we're doing a serious injustice to the students who have the most need if we're taking them on and we don't have the expertise that's required to help them to succeed, because as the statistics reveal, they're already at a disadvantage. So I would say that's my only message is if you don't feel comfortable and confident with the student that walks through the door, there is a great network of professionals, and we're all on the same team, and it's team student, right? So to reach out and find that person or that other group through maybe the IECA affinity groups that have that specialized expertise, and that would be my public service message for all of us.
Thank you, Erin. Julia, in just about a minute or so, what would you add?
No, well, I was just going to say that I totally agree with Erin. If it's beyond your scope, you should have a network of people you can reference. I mean, if you have someone on the spectrum, they might want to work with Eric, who's in here today. I mean, it's not in the best interest of the students to go ahead and work with them when you don't have that area of expertise.
Right. And that all ties back into the whole professional development and why we're here and why you guys are all here too as part of my Friday Forum. So thank you, Julia. Thank you, Erin, for being here. Thank you, everybody that's been in our Friday Forum. Join me next week. My Friday Forums are usually the first Friday and the third Friday. That's what I'm trying to go with. I've got lots of great people lined up. If you know somebody or a topic you want me to cover, please let me know. Next week, I'm going to do a presentation. Speaking of Jeffrey Salingo, he just released his list of the buyers and sellers colleges. If you haven't seen that, very interesting. So I've done some analysis on that, and I'm going to talk about just strategic enrollment management in general, and do some evaluation of the buyers and sellers list. So that's what I'm going to do next Friday. It's just going to be me, and I will be sending that out. We're going to have Hollis Bischoff's going to join me in February 18th, and she's going to talk about working with STEM and engineering students, just like you were saying, Julia, having that knowledge, expertise. So I'll have people who are going to come and do marketing with Canva. We're going to talk about transition for LD students. We're going to have a coach, a mindset coach come in May. So I'm getting lots of people lined up. So let me know if there's somebody that you want me to talk to. And if anybody knows Jeffrey Salingo, he's like the person I want to get on this Friday Forum. So I am looking to, I keep trying. So let me know. And again, Erin and Julia, thank you for joining me today. And everybody, just have a great weekend and savor the time you have with your students and your family and each of us. So join me next week. Thank you. And this ends today's webinar.